Hi, my name is Noah Gift, and today I'm going to talk about AWS Cloud Shell. AWS Cloud Shell is one of these services on AWS that's a little bit hidden and that it's easy to maybe ignore or not pay attention to. But what I'm going to tell you today is how to master this hidden gem of AWS and how it can actually take you to the next level very quickly. There's a lot of features of the Cloud Shell that are a little bit subtle, like for example, the ability to upload and download files, which happens a lot if you're a data engineer or ML engineer or data scientist. Also, how do you actually synchronize data back and forth with S3 intelligently, like only copying the changes? How do you download data from your S3 account? These kind of things are really critical. Also, a few other things we'll talk about are the fact that you can do C# with PowerShell, and you can interact with the .NET environment if you're a C# developer. You can do Python with Bash, or you could also do Python with ZSH. You can use Node. There's all these different interfaces that you have with the Cloud Shell that are really powerful. Another key aspect of the PowerShell is that you can customize it, so you can edit your Bashrc file. You also can go through and run any of these AWS commands that you'll see in the documentation. So for example, if I wanted to communicate with AWS Lambda and invoke a Lambda function, I can do that right from the Cloud Shell. Also, I can open up multiple tabs at the same time and have lots of different things happening, like looking at the logs, for example, in a certain environment, or maybe invoking AWS Athena for some kind of big query operation. So really, you can think of it as an old school command line monitoring system. When I've been running engineering programs and in my career in the Bay Area, a lot of times I would have a whole desktop full of shells, and each one would be a different part of the cluster or something I'm monitoring. It's similar with AWS. It's really just an amazing interface, and let's go through and make sure you're an expert. In probably about an hour, we'll be able to go through all of the features of AWS Cloud Shell. Here we are with AWS Cloud Shell. You can see here from the documentation that it's a command line access to AWS resources and tools in the browser, which is really a critical aspect of it. So this means if you're at the library or if you're at a coffee shop, you can shell into here and start doing work, and it's going to be very fast because you're inside of the AWS ecosystem. So if we scroll down here and we take a look, one of the things that's kind of cool about this is that you can see here the benefits. There's no extra credentials to manage because it's role-based privileges. Also, it's automatically updated with the latest operating system from Amazon. The tools are installed. There's no cost. You also get a gig of storage, and you can customize it. So really, in a nutshell here's like the visual view is that it's one of the interfaces that you can use to programmatically control the AWS platform. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go to my Cloud Shell environment. And let's just take a look at this. How do I launch this? So I go over here, and it's just on any environment here, in any region, you can launch this, and you get this message here from my previous work in the Cloud Shell. So before we even get started, I'm going to show you a little trick here, which is I can delete my current work. So this is really handy because if you're doing a bunch of fancy stuff inside of your Cloud Shell and you were experimenting and you screwed everything up, well, it's good to know that you can actually delete the entire thing and it'll just restart. Okay, we're back here. AWS has reset the Cloud Shell environment, and let's take a look at a few other things here in this actions menu. So a few things that I think are really helpful is if you want to open up a new shell, you can go here, right? And now we've got a new shell. So you can open up as many of these as you want. Also, if you want to split into rows, you can have a top and bottom. This can really be handy if you're working with, let's say, some kind of a foreground mode, microservice like Flask or Fast API, and then you want to invoke it right below. This really, really handy interface. You can also go through here and split into columns, right? So you can build out this, really like a dashboard for doing things inside of your terminal. Now, if we scroll down here as well, we can see that you can download files. So that's pretty handy. If I go in here and I look at, for example, the pwd command, which shows me where my path is, and I do an ls, there's nothing in here. So we'll come back to that, but I could download a file if I wanted to. Now, also, we can upload files. So maybe we'll start with this. You can upload one file at a time from your computer to the home directory. Your home directory is limited to 1 gig. So here we go. This seems like a good idea, is I can upload one file. very, very common for people working with data to upload, let's say, a CSV file or some other artifact that you're going to do machine learning on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my desktop, and I have a zipped file here on my desktop that I'm going to upload called cats dogs small. So let's go here and let's upload this file. We'll go ahead and select it. Here we go, cats dogs small, perfect. And then I'll click upload. And what's really handy about this is now I'm inside of the AWS ecosystem, and this is really handy because I can actually move it around places. So if I go through here and I say unzip cats and dogs, there we go. We've got this whole thing inside, which is pretty handy. If I want to, I can look inside of this directory. There we go. And we can see these different files. So let's go ahead and test out the download here since we're already here. So what I would do is I would just need to know the name of a path. So let's go ahead and download this file, and let's just put in that path here. So we've got /home and Cloud Shell user cats dogs small cat 0.jpg. Okay, that looks perfect. Download it. There we go. So there is actually a great feedback loop where you can go up and down into these different directories. And I'll probably just remove this file as well, which is always a good idea once you've uploaded it if you don't want it anymore, because there's a limited amount of space. We can see this by running the df-h command. This shows us the file system, and notice here that in our home directory, this is where we would actually be working with storage, and there's only 10 megabytes that are currently used, but I have another 899 megabytes available. So that's plenty to do many things that you'd want to do inside of the AWS Cloud Shell. So another thing that we can talk about here that's pretty nifty is that notice if I type in echo $bash, shell, it'll say bin bash. That's the default environment. Now, what's nice about this is you can obviously edit your shell. Let's go ahead and edit our bash shell real quick. And let's just put something kind of fun in there. And let's just say below here, that's echo, this is bash. Here we go. And now I'll go through here and close this environment by opening up a new tab. And it'll say this is bash, right? And I can close that other one. So that's pretty handy, but we don't have to just use bash. We can also use other shells. We can also use the ZSH shell, which many developers like because it has a few extra commands here. Similarly, notice how the bash command didn't run because it's a different shell environment. We can edit this, and we can go through here, and we can go to our ZSHRC file. And notice here that there's some really cool commands that we could play around with, and we could actually tweak these. Like one of my favorite ones in the ZSH configuration file is to do auto CD, so it doesn't need to type in the CD command. But we'll just keep things simple here, and I'll just type in echo, this is ZSH. And again, if we go through here and we go to that same thing I did before, we'll open up a new tab. There we go. This one is bash because the default shell that opens is bash, but what happens if I type in ZSH? This is ZSH, right? So we have two environments here that we can play around with, but we're not done. If you're a .NET developer, you may want to use the PowerShell prompts. Here we go. If we go to PowerShell prompt, you also could go through here and build out things using C# and play around inside of this interactive environment. So really pretty awesome that you can actually play around with all these different environments here, whether you're a .NET developer, you like Bash, or you like Z Shell. So let's go ahead and move on a little bit here and actually play around a little bit with using this environment to actually do some work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to exit again, and we can see here that if I type in echo $shell, we can we can double check what shell we're in. Okay, good, we're in the bash shell. So the first thing that I would say that we can do here is that we could copy some files to an S3 bucket. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to look at the official documentation here. And let's go ahead and pull this up. And this is a great place to get ideas about what you can do. So look, copy multiple files between your local machine and Cloud Shell. So this looks pretty cool. What we can do is we can actually upload multiple files to a bucket. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and create a bucket from the command line. So first up here, I'll go through here and I'll type in this command. And so this command here says AWS, use the S3 API, create a bucket, and we're going to actually put the bucket name right here. So we'll go ahead and call this something unique. We'll call this cats, dogs, 11212021. There we go. That looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and push return. What's nice about this is that I don't necessarily need to use the console itself to do things. Now let's go ahead and double check to make sure that this exists. So if we go through here and I look for cats and dogs, we should see, if I refresh, there we go, cats, dogs, right? So we're able to programmatically create buckets and control them, which is really, really handy. Another thing you can do as well, if I type in AWS S3 LS, I can pipe out the output of this to count the number of buckets. Here you can see that I have 99 buckets. So what I did is I ran the AWS S3 command to list the number of buckets, pipe that into the word count -L command, and now I can see that there's 99 buckets. So, okay, what else can we do? Well, we can synchronize these files here. And in fact, if I look in this directory, these are these files that I uploaded earlier. So what I can do is I can type in a synchronization command to put these inside of this bucket, cats and dogs here. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll take this name, which is a neat little trick that I like to do, and I will put in the hashtag right there. And that way I can refer to this command without it blowing up. And all I need to do here is just type in AWS S3 sync dot, which would put everything in this directory into this destination. And so this is the trick here, is I want everything that's in this directory to be synchronized to the remote S3 directory. You can see here every single one of those files is synchronized very, very quickly. That's the other advantage of using this Cloud Shell environment. And once all these files are uploaded or synchronized into this environment, what I can do as well is I can actually go through here and verify that bucket is actually ready to go. So let's go ahead and watch this thing go here. You can see here tons of files are synchronizing. And if I wanted to make small changes, the synchronization command will actually keep them up to date. So really, you can see how the Cloud Shell, if you're working with any kind of a data pipeline, data engineering, machine learning engineering, is really invaluable. So let's go back to the AWS Cloud Shell here. Go ahead and click refresh. There we go. And we can see here that all those files are inside of my bucket. So, all right, so let's go through here and download something as well. That's a zipped file, which is a common way to synchronize things. How would we do this? Well, I would just go through here and type in zip-r cat like that. There we go. We added a zip file here. There you see this. Now all I need to do is just type in pwd and actually put in this path here, and we can actually just do this. This is a neat little trick, is I can do cat.zip. That way I can verify that the path exists. This is a great idea so that you don't get yourself into trouble. So I can copy this right here, copy this path, and then go here and then go to download file and download this. So you can see here, if you're interacting with the AWS S3 ecosystem, which is very, very common, maybe you have a machine learning model you want to download, a great way to do it is, again, to use this Cloud Shell environment. Okay, so what else can we do here? Well, another thing that we can do that's pretty handy is that we can actually go through here and work with other services, including command line tools and using things like S3 buckets, or using Elastic Beanstalk, or using the SAM interface, which is for serverless. So let's take a look here at the documentation. You can see a key benefit of the Cloud Shell is that you can use it to manage your services from the command line interface. So here we go, DynamoDB, Cloud9, EC2, all these are great examples. Let's do this. Let's run this example here where we can actually manage a DynamoDB database and actually create this table ourselves. And so this is going to create a table basically in this music collection. So let's go ahead and go through here and then go back to our Cloud Shell. And let's just go back to the root directory here. So we're out of that directory, and we'll go through here and we'll paste this in. So notice how it gives us this command that says the safe paste for multi-line text, and it just lets us verify what we're doing. So let's look at it. What is it doing? Let's always make sure that it's actually safe. So it's saying, go to DynamoDB, create a table called music collection. The attribute definitions would be artist, and the attribute type is S. Attribute name is song title, attribute S. The key schema is artist and key type hash. There we go. So looks like a fairly safe operation here for us to create a table in Dynamo. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's paste it, and now I just click return. Awesome. We're able to programmatically interact with Dynamo. And it gives us the whole output of everything that happened. Pretty cool here. So how do we verify that that works? I can go back to my AWS account here, and I can go to Dynamo. Just go ahead and search for it, and look. We're able to actually interact with that Dynamo environment, which is again pretty awesome here, because that table actually exists, music collection. And look, there's a whole schema all set up for us, and we're ready to use. So this really can be an incredible efficiency if you're interacting with AWS services. Now, a service that I use a lot that I want to cover next here is Cloud9. This is a more full-fledged development environment. And one of the things you can do is you can actually programmatically create new environments from Cloud Shell. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do this. We'll say AWS Cloud9. Notice what I do. I say create environment for EC2, and I call this environment my demo env. We'll call this my demonstration development environment, and we'll pick, in this case, a free tier type, a micro. I can pick a subnet. I can also go through here and say I want to stop it after 30 minutes, and here's the owner of this account. Now I'm going to tweak this a little bit because some of these things here I don't really care about. I'm going to go through here and I'm going to take out the owner for the automatic stop time. Let's see if we can change this to 30 minutes, and then also for the subnet, I don't need to explicitly set that subnet here. But the rest of it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and try this out. There we go. So you can see here that that command worked. So it's actually much quicker to do it this way than to use the console. So how do we find Cloud9? Pretty easy. I just search for it up here, Cloud9, and we see there's a Cloud IDE for building things out. Now, where would this environment be? Let's scroll down here. Let's scroll down here. Where is it? I don't see it yet. Well, maybe it's on the second page here. Let's go through here. Oh, there we go. My development, my demo environments. And look, this account has already been created. And in fact, it's in the lifecycle state creating right here. So I could go through here, open it up, and we're ready to go. So really a very efficient way to build out a temporary cloud-based environment that has more full features than just having a shell. And this is actually potentially a great way to do it, is to maybe make some of these commands in your Bashrc, and you could actually build easy interfaces to launch new environments. So what else can we do here? Well, let's keep going through. We also can do things with EC2. So here's an example of what you can do. Let's go ahead and copy this. If you wanted to spawn EC2 instances, we can go ahead and paste this in. Look, I could say AWS, I want you to run an image, and I want you to pick a specific AMI. So if your company has developed your own Amazon AMIs, or you want to use, I don't know, the default, you would select it right here. You could also pick how many you want to launch, what type, And then you could actually assign things like the subnet and security groups and key pairs. So this again is really handy for you to, just get very efficient with how you launch EC2 instances instead of needing to go through the console. And if we scroll down here as well, we can also look, you can do things like create archived systems as well. And you can also interact with Elastic Beanstalk, which is a very common platform as a service offering. Here's another one. You can go through here and you can interact with the Elastic Container Service, and you could, for example, configure a region, create a cluster, and launch a Fargate instance as well, which is a container as a service option. Finally, you can also build out a command line tool that in this case, here we go. Here's a microservice here that allows us to build, a hello world microservice. Let's go ahead and try this one out because this is probably one of the more simple ones. So if I go back here and I say, let's run this command, let's take a look at what it does. So first up, if I do Control A, it gets me to the beginning. We can say that this is runtime Python 3.7. We want to use the pip dependency manager. We want to create a template for a hello world application. And then we want to call this thing SAM app, right? And let's actually just put a date here so that it's a little bit simpler to debug. There we go, 2021. Now, if I run this, it'll create a directory inside of this Cloud Shell environment, and then I can actually start building out a serverless application. There we go. We can see here that this is actually ready to go. And let's look inside the SAM application here. And now we see that there's a file that's called Hello World. And I could also go through here and README. Let's go ahead and take a look. So it says this project contains source code and supporting files for a serverless application, right? So this is the Hello World application. Here's a template. There's unit tests. There's everything ready to go here. And in fact, how do we do this? Well, we do SAM build for the first time. And we can actually do SAM deploy guided. So really just two commands here. So let's go ahead and copy these two commands so that we can actually refer to them later. And I'm going to just call this, let's call this deploy cmds dot sh, and we'll go through here and we'll just paste these in. There we go. Now we can get rid of this because we don't want to do a container. We just want to do SAM deploy guided, and we'll try that out, see if that works. Okay, and then let's go ahead and edit the code a little bit. Let's go into Hello World and let's look at this app.py file here. Here we go, a very simple Lambda script, and we could go through here and we could just change it a little bit and just say, okay, what do we want to do to change this? Let's go ahead and change this to say Hello World from AWS Cloud Shell. There we go. That looks good. And if I go back here, I can now do those commands that we talked about earlier by referring to the deploy command. So I can cat it right here and we can refer to it. So let's do that first. Let's go ahead and say SAM build. What happens? Okay, so it's building our microservice here. It looks like it worked, and we could actually invoke it. So let's try that out. Let's say SAM local invoke. There we go. Uh-oh, it looks like it requires Docker, so we can't invoke this locally, which is fine. But what we can do is we can deploy this to the Lambda runtime environment. There we go. Let's go ahead and just say return, confirm changes. Yes, we'll deploy. Yes, we'll do that. This is okay. Save arguments, sure. Config file, there we go. So what's handy about this is it really handles all the deployment to Lambda for us. So you can see this is a framework of infrastructure as code. And really, if you're a command line developer here, you don't even need an IDE. It can completely deploy this change remotely, which is a very powerful way to develop serverless applications on the cloud platform. Okay, there we go, update in progress. And we can see here that this cannot be found. It's update complete. There we go. Failed to create a stack. So we have some kind of a problem here for our deployment. But let's go ahead and see if it was able to deploy anyway. And if we go to Lambda, let's go ahead and take a look. And let's see if we can find this function here. Last modified. So it wasn't able to deploy. We would have to debug that, which would be pretty simple to do. But the main idea here is that it's trivial to interact with AWS services, and you can do it all from this command line environment. So what else? What else is left here for us to work with? Well, we can also look at data protection here, data encryption. So inside this Cloud Shell environment, the data can be encrypted with the AWS Key Management Service. We also can look at monitoring with CloudTrail. So this whole environment is actually able to be monitored from CloudTrail. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's go to CloudTrail here. Let's take a look at that. And here we go. You can see here that all of these different events here are all monitored from CloudShell. Look, we can see send heartbeat, right? These are the different commands that I'm running. So I can also make sure that I'm monitoring what people are doing, or myself, what I'm doing inside of my CloudShell environment by looking at CloudTrail. So that's a great option as well for security. What else can we do here? So inside of this compute environment, a few things to point out is that it's got a kind of a lightweight one virtual CPU. It's got a couple gigs of RAM, and it's got 1 gig of storage. It also has a bunch of stuff pre-installed here. And so you can take a look at all the different things. Like, for example, if we wanted to look at the bash version, for example, let's go ahead and do that. Let's type in bash version. There we go. It shows us that we're running 4.2. That's good to know. What else can we do? We can also look at things like ZShell. We can look at the AWS version of the CLI. This is a great idea just to make sure that you're running the version that you expect. Here we go. This is 2.215. And if we go through here as well, all these other interfaces here, like for example, maybe the issue we had with SAM was that we needed to upgrade the version, and that's probably why there's a failure. And again, you can manage that yourself. It also has runtimes available, so we actually have Python 3 here, which is pretty easy to interact with. So let's go ahead and get out of here, and let's just type in Python 3. Here we go. We see Python 3.7. So what I like to do when I'm developing with Python inside the Cloud Shell is I'll do this. I'll say Python 3-m venv. This will create a virtual environment, and then I will put this inside of my home directory in a invisible folder. That's what the dot does. Now the trick that I like to do is do this. We'll type in source ~/.venv bin activate. And I use the hashtag so I can just remember the command but not execute it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to edit my Bashrc file here like this. And then I'm going to put this below and say this is bash. And I am sourcing Python venv. There we go. And we just do this. We'll source it every time I launch the shell, which is a pretty normal thing to do. Let's go ahead and run this. There we go. I'm sourcing a new environment. There we go. We can tell that that's a new Python environment by typing in which Python, and it's in the virtual environment path. So you can also tweak your environment here. And then, well, why would I want to do this? Well, now I can do a pip install IPython, and I could, for example, just start running through all the different things that I wanted to do inside of this environment. And now that I have IPython, I can just type in import, os.lister, whatever it is I want to do, and I also can play around with different things in Python. So this is a great environment for us to install potentially Boto 3. So if I say pip install Boto 3, and I can start playing around with that Boto 3 API by using the IPython environment. So let's go ahead and try that real quick. So if we go through here and I type in IPython, and I type in import Boto3, now we're really dangerous because I can start playing around with commands. So how would we do this? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the Boto3 docs, and let's just play around with something really simple. I think a good one to play around with would be S3. Let's go through Amazon buckets. You can see here, this is probably one of the easiest ones. Is let's go through here and let's make a client S3, and we type in S3.list buckets. There we go. And it has no buckets. There we go. And we can list all my buckets in my environment. So I could also start to programmatically build out these little scripts using Boto3. So, really in a nutshell, I think the big takeaway here with this Cloud Shell environment is that it's really a great place for you to master. And you can see there's all kinds of development tools here, command line completion, other utilities like make, man. And the final thing I guess that I'll talk about is that you also can customize it by installing packages. So if we do this, we say yum, for example, that's the package manager that we can actually use to install things. And so what I could do here is if I wanted to run the top command, we can see what's running inside of my environment. That's kind of neat. But what if I want to use a fancier top? htop. Well, that's not installed. Well, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and install htop, yum install htop, which is a fancier top. Here we go. I just go through here and I say yes. And now we installed htop. Now let's type in htop. There we go. So really, if you're into the shell, the AWS Cloud Shell environment is about as good as they get. It's got deep integration with AWS, and it can make you much, much more efficient.